Hello, this is Business Today. Now, the cost of borrowing is going to have to be higher for longer. That is one of the key messages from the International Monetary Fund's latest update on the health of the global economy. I'm down here. The group says the overall medium-term prospects do remain weak, but it does expect the global economy to grow by 3.2% this year, unchanged from its last update in April. But it says there have been notable developments below the surface. Global inflation is set to fall from 6.7% last year to 5.9% this year, but warns the battle to curb rising prices is now getting more difficult. Now, there's also concern over public finances and international trade. The group says more countries are going to go their own way and imposing tariffs and other measures that might be against the rules of global trade. Let's talk to Pierre-Olivier Gourinchas, who's the IMF's chief economist, joins us now from Washington. Good to have you on the programme. And talk to me, first of all, about that outlook. There is a real mixed picture, but it suggests that things are heading in the right direction, finally.
Yes, and thank you for having me. Definitely, things are going in the right direction. I mean, the global economy is growing at a steady rate, 3.2% this year. We expect 3.3% next year. This is a very modest upgrade. And inflation continues to come down. So this is the good news. Inflation is coming down, maybe a little bit slower than was expected earlier in the year, but overall coming down. So, robust, steady, resilient global economy. But at the same time, we're seeing, and the concern we have, there are two concerns. One is that, well, maybe this inflation path is not going to be continuing at the same rate. When we look back, a lot of the surge in inflation and the decline was coming from energy and food prices. Now, energy and food price inflation are back to their pre-pandemic levels. Inflation rates overall are still a little bit higher. So there is still a little bit of work that needs to be done, and that is the job of central banks. And then second, we're concerned about trade and industrial policy, as you pointed out.
Yeah, and inflation is one of the key issues that has been a real drag on the global economy now for a number of years. You suggest that's coming down, but the battle to tame those rising prices is getting harder. Why?
Well, as I said, we are seeing energy and food price inflation coming back to their pre-pandemic levels. So what we are left with now, we're left with inflation that remains high in services. And we have also some wage inflation that is quite strong. Now, the wage inflation we're not too worried about because a lot of that is catch up. People have lost on their real income during the years of high inflation. They're recovering. Their real income is coming back up. So this is to be expected. The services inflation is maybe a little bit more of a concern. And depending how quickly it comes back down, that will control the pace of this inflation going forward.
Talk to me too about, so many issues in this report, but you talk about the danger of global tariffs, trade difficulties and barriers going up to protectionism. And once again, that could prove to be a huge drag on the global economy. And given perhaps what we're seeing, for example, in the United States, in what is a presidential election year, promises of more protectionism, more putting America first, where does that leave the rest of the world economy?
Well, we've seen a very large increase in the number of trade distorting measures in the last year, in 2023. We had upwards of 3,000 such measures compared to only 1,000 in 2019. And 2019 was not a low tide. It was already somewhat elevated. So clearly, it's not just the US. We're seeing these trade distorting measures being implemented by a number of countries. They're often unilateral. They lead to retaliation, tit-for-tat measures. That is not yet affecting global trade. We're seeing global trade growing at about the same pace as the global economy. So the trade to economic activity, that ratio is stable. But under the surface, you see a lot of undoing of trade linkages between countries, especially if they are quite distant from a geopolitical point of view. And at some point, this is going to start weighing down on economic activity.
And I touched in that introduction on the fact that they may be against the rules of global trade. What are the sanctions? What are the punishments if countries enact these measures?
Well, we try to build over the last 50 years a multilateral system where, there are some cases where it's legitimate for countries to put in place trade restrictions or countervailing duties or things like that. but it has to be done in a setting where it can be adjudicated. Right now, unfortunately, that setting is not really working. The World Trade Organization is not really functioning as it should be functioning. So we can only ask for countries to go back to the WTO, the World Trade Organization, and start working within its rules when they're making a case that somehow there should be some protection that should be put in place.
Really good to talk to you, as always. Thank you, Pierre-Olivier Gourinchas, the IMF's chief economist, joining us from Washington. Grateful for your time. Thank you.